Hey y'all, it's Megan, and in this video, I'm sewing up the reversible lore sweater. You can wear the cross bodice in the front or in the back. It is super cute, and we're going to go ahead and get started. The first step is going to be to take the cross bodice piece and the cross bodice band, and you're going to fold that band in half wrong sides together. And then you're going to pin it right sides to that cross bodice piece, and you're going to pin it together along the bottom. And you do just want to make sure that on your band pieces, on the cross bodice band pieces, that you are sewing the side seam piece on the correct side because they are not interchangeable. Once you have that pinned in place, then you are just going to stitch it together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once it is sewn, then you can press that piece up. If you need to trim off any excess piece, you can, but you're going to press that seam up. And if you want, you can go ahead and top stitch it along the bodice portion. Once that's done, you can set that piece aside for a moment, and you're going to take the top cross bodice and the top cross bodice band and fold that in half, wrong sides together. And then with right sides together, again, making sure that the side seam side of the band is matching to the side seam piece. It's written on your pattern piece, and I just clip a clip on each of those side seam pieces so I don't get them mixed up. And you are going to pin that band with right sides together along the bottom edge of the top cross bodice. Once you have this pinned in place, you are going to use your sewing machine and you are going to baste this in place with a scant 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now it's time to attach both the bottom and top cross bodice pieces. So make sure that top band is still flipped up, and with right sides together matching that notch, you're going to pin the bottom cross bodice to the top bodice. And you are going to stitch this entire seam with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you have the seam sewn, then you can remove that basting stitch and then press the seam up toward the top bodice and top stitch if you would like. Then you can set that cross bodice to the side for a moment while we work on the solid bodice piece. You are going to take your solid bodice band and fold it in half, wrong sides together, and then with right sides matching and aligning those raw edges, you are going to pin that band to the solid bodice edge, and you are going to stitch that together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then go ahead and press the seam up toward the bodice and top stitch if you would like. Once you have both bodices bands finished, you are going to place them right sides together, aligning them at the shoulders, and you are going to stitch each shoulder with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then it's time to add the sleeve, so you're going to lay your bodice out flat, and you are going to match the center notch of the sleeve to the shoulder seam, and you are going to pin and ease that sleeve into place, matching the edge of the sleeve to the edge of the bodice, and then pinning it along the arm side. Once you have it pinned in place, you are going to stitch it together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then go ahead and repeat that with the other sleeve piece on the other side of the bodice. And if you're doing the hem version, then you can go ahead and create a memory press by pressing the edge of the sleeve up a 1/2 inch toward the wrong side. Next, we're going to sew the side seam. Before I do that, I like to baste the top bodice band down a scant 1/2 inch from the side seam, just so it stays in place while we're sewing the bodices together. Once I have that basted, then I'm going to put the bodices right sides together and I'm going to align them so that the bottom bands match up perfectly. And I like to go ahead and baste it together along each side so that the bottom bands match up perfectly. And after I baste it together, which you can see on this side, I just open it up and make sure that everything is matching. That way, when you sew the side seam, it's all matched up perfectly. Sometimes when you're using a serger, it can pull one side a little bit and then the bands will be off along the bottom. So this is just a little extra step, but I do like to do it to make sure that those bands are matching up perfectly. If I baste it together, open it up, and it's a little bit off, I'll just remove the basting stitch and do it again. And then once everything is matched up perfectly, then you are going to go ahead and pin the bodices together from that bottom hemband all the way to the sleeve edge. And you will sew it together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then go ahead and repeat that for the other side seam. And once you're done, you are going to press that seam toward one side. If you have a serger tail, just tuck it between the two seams that you press and tack just a little bit on the side to hold it in place. Then go ahead and set that aside and grab your neckband piece and you are going to fold it in half with right sides together and stitch those short ends together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then you're going to fold it in half again, enclosing those seams with the wrong sides together, and you're going to quarter your neckband piece. You are also going to quarter the neckline opening, and you're going to match the seam on the neckband to one shoulder seam and then pin the other quarter points together with the right sides of the neckband to the right sides of the bodice. Once you have that neckband pinned on, the neckband will have to slightly stretch to fit the neckline opening. You're going to stitch the neckband to the bodice with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you have that seam sewn, you can give it a nice press. And if you would like, you can press the seam toward the bodice and top stitch in place. If you're doing the lantern sleeve, then go ahead and set your bodice aside for a moment and you're going to take your cuff piece and you're going to fold it in half, right sides together, and then you're going to fold it in half again with the wrong sides together, and you are going to stitch along that short edge through all 4 layers of fabric with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And then you're going to unfold and flip the cuff right sides out, and you're going to quarter your cuff pieces. Go ahead and set the cuff pieces aside for a moment, and you are going to run 2 gathering stitches on your sleeve edge, one 1/4 inch from the edge and one 5/8 of an inch from the edge. And then you're also going to quarter your sleeve edge. You're going to flip your bodice wrong side out and stick your cuff piece inside of the sleeve, aligning the seam. And then you're going to match the quarter points of the cuff to the quarter point on your sleeve. And once you have these all matched and pinned, you will go ahead and pull those bobbin threads to gather the sleeve edge to fit the cuff piece. Once you have it gathered to fit, then you are going to stitch the cuff to the sleeve with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and repeat that process for the other sleeve and sleeve cuff. Then go ahead and remove those gathering stitches and you're going to pull the cuff away from the sleeve and it is all complete. If you did the hem sleeve, then you would go ahead and hem the 1/2 inch hem allowance along the edge of the sleeve and your lore sweater is complete. Again, you can wear it with the curved bodice in the front or the back, and it is oh so cute. If you make one, as always, we would love to see it posted in our Facebook group or tag me on Instagram at Made for Mermaids, hashtag Made for Mermaids Patterns, hashtag lore pattern.